Hello and welcome back to the Binteger podcast. My name is Biniam. I'm the host of this podcast. This is the place where integrity calls and wholeness manifests. I'm so glad to have you join us here on the 30th episode of this program. Today we are talking about the intersection where self-awareness has to do with integrity. This is the podcast where we describe and explore and dive into everything integrity related on a personal level. There's a distinction there from business interests for integrity and personal side. I'm focusing on the personal side because I believe that's where it all starts. I believe it's important to start on the personal level and not just on the business level without having the personal in check as well. But before we dive into our topic for today and exploring what that is, I like to do a feelings check-in because this is one of the ways I practice self-awareness, which is what we're talking about today. Self-awareness, that ability to know or be aware of one's thoughts, emotions, and actions. But we carve time out for that just because that's one of, in my experience, the ways I didn't have access to knowing about me, and that took me down a pathway where I made a lot of choices that didn't reflect or align with my values. The better we know ourselves, the better we know where we come from, the better we know how we operate, the better we're able to make decisions in the lives that align with who we are and what we're made for. And so a simple way of doing that is a feelings check. And this is a practice I've learned from the 12-step program that I'm a part of, and we keep on doing it. And I've incorporated this in a daily practice in my life because I found it so helpful. And over time, there's been an ease that has come about in me being able to do this check-in in a way that I didn't have access to before. Once upon a time, if I was asked how I'm doing, I'd of course give the typical "I'm good" kind of thing. But if I was pressed for really "how are you doing?", I would struggle because I wouldn't know how to take an accounting internally of where I was at in my emotional state. And that inaccessibility, that inability to be able to find words, to touch base with, I don't know, it's disconcerting for me. It doesn't feel good. So I really appreciate being able to practice and say, I like knowing where I'm at and what it means to be me in this moment and how I'm experiencing the world around me. That's a really valuable skill and something that I don't take for granted. So feelings check-in. How am I doing in this moment? In this moment, I'm feeling a little bit like I'm behind the eight ball. The preparation for this podcast today took a little longer than I expected because I had time and I was enjoying my time relaxing. It's Sunday, and I was able to take some breaks along the way and attend to some other commitments. So I'm feeling a little bit behind the eight ball, and I'm feeling a little bit guilty as a result because I like to manage my time better. I like to manage my time well so that I'm being responsible for it because I'm very careful with my time, except when I'm not. So there's a little bit of guilt. There's a little bit of discomfort there. I'm also looking extremely, I'm excited about watching a movie later this evening with a friend and reading a bedtime story to my kids. And so, yes, so there's some things I'm also looking forward to. And you know what else? I'm also really grateful. I'm also really grateful because I'm in this season of life. I'm in the season of life where I'm able to feel my existence on purpose without a sense of feeling like I'm vulnerably like out there. I don't feel like I'm in a danger zone anymore. I feel like I'm on purposely able to use my mind, able to think through what my needs are, able to advocate, able to experience some beautiful things in my life right now, from friendships to work and even, in my personal life, the relationships that I have. It's a beautiful feeling. And I like being in this space. I like being in a space where I don't have to worry about drama. I like being in a space where I don't have to worry about things being unstable. And that is, I think, the result of living in alignment with my values, knowing what my values are and aligning that way. So that is where I'm at feelings-wise in this moment. My dear Binteger, where are you at? I want to give you that space and time to legitimize and think through how you're feeling, where you're at in this moment, and wherever it's at, whether it's wonderful or not, it's a good thing to be able to feel into it, because this human experience, time is not on our side. And these various seasons that we go through with whatever that's going on, there's something to be said about actually taking a snapshot and saying, let me see this moment for what it is. In the midst of whatever's going on, we're alive. In the midst of the chaos or lack of chaos, there's these moments where we can just pause and say, it's good to reflect and acknowledge where we're at. So yeah, that's why I make this space for you and I to do a feelings check-in. Let's go ahead and progress into our topic of self-awareness and integrity. Self-awareness and integrity. What is self-awareness? I think we hear this word quite often. Self-awareness is simply just being aware of what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you're doing. And we've already been practicing a little bit of self-awareness already in this podcast and many others, in the way that we're trying to be aware of what's going on internally. So self-awareness is a compound word. Self, your own body, and awareness, knowing something. So knowing something about your body, what's going on. Not only in your physical health, saying, oh, I've got a broken arm or whatever. It's more than that. It's knowing your physical well-being, your emotional well-being, and your intellectual or thinking well-being, right? And so it's that ability to ask questions, because it comes about by asking questions. You see, a lot of us, we go through life and we sort of respond and react to the things that are going on around us. And so there's a lot of things going on. And I don't know, let's say you are watching the news and you're seeing all these boom, 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 all these stories coming through, and you're just kind of taking it in. But rarely are we given that space and time to think through what it is we're watching and ask questions, saying, the fact that there's a war on this side of the world, what does that mean for me? How am I interpreting that? What is it that I'm walking away thinking as a result of having that bit of information? This is what we're doing on a personal level when we're looking at and trying to be aware of what our thinking process is. When you see some people and you're observing them in their social setting, maybe they are eating out at a restaurant, and you're wondering about them. As you look at them, you're being self-aware and saying, why am I interested in that? Am I interested because I'm comparing myself to them and saying, ooh, I fall short? Or am I interested in their existence because they are a cute couple, and their devotion in their date or whatever that they're doing brings you joy and happiness? Like, it's that sense of being aware of what's going on internally. Self-awareness, where it intersects with integrity and what it has to do with integrity, I think of it in this analogy. Self-awareness is to integrity what oil is to an engine. If an engine does not have enough oil, the parts that are moving that need lubrication aren't going to move anymore, and then you're going to eventually have a seized engine, which is good for nothing, and then it's kind of worthless. In the same way, if you don't have self-awareness in the midst of pursuing integrity, you don't have that ability to know what are the moving parts internally that make your engine go. So self-reflection is like that oil that lubricates. It gives you those questions to ask when you're pursuing integrity, when you're pursuing aligning your values with your external actions. It gives you that ability to be able to say, why am I doing this? What's the purpose behind this? Is this good? Is this aligning with what I want? And it's really getting to the core issue of what are your intentions in the midst of all this. So for me, for example, the way I think about this is, at any point, I think about the way I'm engaging my world. And I imagine if anyone were to just press pause in my life, just press pause in this moment and ask me, what's your intention for why you asked this, or why you're doing this, or whatever. I want to be able to think through or be self-aware and give them a response saying, here's how this makes sense. Here's what my intentions are behind this. And here's why I'm embarking on thinking or feeling or doing whatever it is that I'm doing. At any moment, I want to be that self-aware, and that's what I've been striving for. And so that means I'm needing to ask myself a lot of questions out of curiosity to say, what's really driving me here? How can I be aware of all the stories that I'm facilitating in my head and the ones that I find more compelling to latch onto? So there's a real importance for self-reflection or self-awareness in the midst of one pursuing walking with integrity. Self-awareness really lends towards this self-reflection where you're doing that active identifying of your values and beliefs. That's where we start off in our pursuit of integrity, is to say, what do we really feel strongly about? And as you reflect internally, as you self-reflect on these things, and then you see that integrity is not only the awareness of what your values are, but where your actions align with those values. That's where self-awareness really helps you to recognize if that alignment is there or not. That self-awareness says, here's your values, here's what your actions are. Do they align or do they not align? And so that's what self-awareness really helps. Furthermore, self-awareness is fantastic in helping you see the patterns in the way that your actions are evolving and your thought process. So if you're saying that this is your value over here, and then it's seeing if your actions align, it starts watching that pattern and saying, is this only once in a while that it aligns, or is it only like every other time and there's a lot more inconsistency? So self-awareness enables you to identify those inconsistencies in your pursuit of integrity, and then it helps you to be able to bring your attention to where your actions contradict your values, so that you can build a better foundation of integrity. Furthermore, there's this thing called personal accountability in the midst of self-awareness. So as we are practicing aligning our actions with our values, one of those things is taking responsibility when we miss the mark. As human beings, we're going to mess up. Every one of us, myself included. We're not meant to be perfect. And so when we are inconsistent, when we mess up, when we're aware that our actions or emotions aren't aligning with our values, this is where self-awareness enables us to take personal accountability or responsibility to acknowledge those missteps. And in so acknowledging them, it's a crucial part of our integrity that upholds that we're taking ownership of our actions, and we are taking the necessary steps to make amends, make things right, etc., so we can continue walking with integrity. And then finally, there's this piece that I've talked about before of authenticity or trustworthiness. And this is where self-awareness really is helpful in understanding, who are you truly? When you're self-aware, you're doing a deep dive and saying, what's the real version of me? How can I get acquainted with that real version of me? How can I start understanding me really well? It's almost like you're being introduced to yourself for the first time and you're saying, hey, nice to meet me. I did not know this is what makes me tick. And a lot of epiphanies for so many of us come about when we're sitting with professional help, psychologists or counselors or therapists, when they ask us various questions. And in the midst of asking those questions, we start to discover things about ourselves, saying, oh, now I understand why I always get triggered or ticked off or whatever else response to certain dynamics. And that was information you didn't have beforehand, but now you have a lot more access to it. And so with this awareness of who we are and what we stand for, it helps build our integrity because we know what our values then are, and it builds up that essential currency and integrity of trust, right? This trustworthiness. So we're authentic to our values and we're trustworthy in the way that we're pursuing and aligning those values with our actions. And so it really reflects that consistency over time, that reliability in acting according to our values. So yeah, what are your thoughts on this exploration of self-awareness in relation to integrity? I use the analogy of how I feel it's like oil to an engine. It's so critical and crucial, and without it, that engine is going to seize up. Without self-awareness, we have no intel on who we are and what we're about. And as a result, the pursuit of integrity, of aligning our values with our actions, it's dead in the water because you don't even know what your values are in the first place. And you're not really asking the questions of, do my actions reflect those values? And that's where I feel that this is such a critical consideration in saying, how well are you doing in your pursuit of being self-aware? Are you asking yourself those hard questions? Are you really curious to try and find out why you are the way you are? Are you interested in seeing not only where you're at, but how you can grow over time? This is what we are committed to as we walk towards, as we embrace integrity. We want to see transformation. So I That's what I hope for you, as I've come to experience it for me. Thank you for listening in on this 30th episode of the Z Bintegers podcast. I'll see you soon.